Welcome to the Top 5 podcast with your hosts, Rail Bricker and Lindsay Adams.
And welcome back. Our special guest today is Craig Meriwether. Craig comes to us all the way from Flagstaff, Arizona. Just chatting with Craig earlier, and he tells me they had 12 feet of snow last year. You can keep that all to yourself, my friend.
Yeah.
Coming from Brisbane, Australia, where there's never any snow, ever. And that's the way I like it. Now, let me tell you about Craig. He's a mindset coach, clinical hypnotherapist, helping people eliminate negative emotions and trauma so they can reach their full potential. He's a certified clinical hypnotherapist, medical hypnosis specialist, neurolinguistic programming specialist, and founder of Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy, helping people eliminate the negative emotions and limiting beliefs that may keep them from reaching their full potential. For over 12 years, he's been helping people heal from early childhood trauma, helping cancer patients with pain control, veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder, students with test anxiety, entrepreneurs with confidence, my goodness me, and the list goes on, athletes with peak performance, and anyone who may be dealing with overwhelm, fear, and anxiety. He's created the ACE Any test, the most comprehensive course for test anxiety relief, so that people can eliminate anxiety around exams, auditions, job interviews, and public speaking, as well as increase their confidence and self-esteem. And today, we're talking to Craig about the 5 top tips for overcoming fear and anxiety. So welcome, Craig. Great to have you here.
Oh, thank you, Lindsay. I appreciate that introduction, and I appreciate the invitation for being on your guys' podcast. And I understand the whole not wanting the cold and the snow. I grew up near the beach in San Diego, California, so the cold is finally getting to me, I think, and thinking of warmer climates.
San Diego, a beautiful spot. All right, let's get into it. Top 5.
Well,
number 1.
Okay, top 5 tips. Yeah, of course, this could be a week-long conversation, fear and anxiety. And narrowing it down to 5 tips is not the easiest thing to do, but I've come up with 5 things that I think will help people, especially once you understand that the emotional state of fear and anxiety is just a warning signal from your brain that there's something dangerous in your external environment. Just like when somebody pulls the fire alarm in a building, the sirens go off, the strobe lights go off, warning everybody that there's danger and you need to seek safety right away. You also have a warning system within your nervous system, and that's feelings. The feeling state of anxiety, the feeling state of fear, the feeling state of anger, the feeling state of worry, feeling state of overwhelm are signals from your brain to your nervous system to your body that there's something dangerous in your external environment. You're picking up something through your 5 senses, what you're seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling. The problem is your mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. Now, that's why a nightmare, Rail and Lindsay, if you ever had like a nightmare or you know somebody who has, you know that it can be extraordinarily scary, even if it's something ridiculous, something like one of the Wizard of Oz trees chasing down the street, throwing apples at you or something. It's ridiculous. It's silly. It's not going to happen. And yet your body thinks it's a real danger, something that threatens your very safety. And so even in the middle of sleep, you'll turn on that stress response that, your brain's creating the hormones of adrenaline and cortisol. Adrenaline's, you've heard the stories of the grandmothers lifting cars off of babies. That's adrenaline doing that. So that's now coursing through your body, 300% more blood moving to the big muscles of your arms to fight, 300% more blood moving to the big muscles of your legs to escape, changing your entire physiology because a Wizard of Oz tree or something ridiculous is happening within this nightmare. Or it could be something very realistic, like maybe a war veteran having a PTSD dream about the war, even though it's 30 years ago. Both situations, you're cozy, comfortable, safe in bed. Your mind thinks you're in danger. So in terms of fear and anxiety, it's not something you actually want to get rid of. You want those warning signals. Anxiety, fear, that keeps you from walking down that dark alley at midnight, even though it's a shortcut home. It's keeps you from peering over the edge of that canyon to get a closer look at the bottom of the canyon. It keeps you from petting that rattlesnake or the nice bear in the middle of the trail. So you want some form of fear and anxiety, but when it becomes unresourceful, when it becomes not very resilient, is when you have issues around a chronic anxiety, chronic fear, and keeps you from maybe moving forward in life. So that's a real quick synopsis of fear and anxiety in just a couple of minutes. And the first biggest tip is what is strongest within your mind is what you practice over and over again. Now, of course, we know that's from riding a bicycle or learning martial arts or a foreign language or a musical instrument of some kind. What you practice, you get better at. But what if you're practicing anxiety? What if you're practicing fear? What if you're practicing anger? This can be a problem because you're literally wiring that into your brain. Just learning how to walk when you're a baby, you are wiring that skill into your brain, into your nervous system, bringing a glass of water to your mouth, learning a foreign language, learning a musical instrument, learning to ride a bicycle. You're literally wiring neurons in your brain, but you can also wire anxiety. You can wire fear. You can wire anger, because you're doing it over and over and over again. So one of the biggest tips I like to tell people, especially when doing one-on-one work, is that, yes, there's a lot of healing work you can do in a therapeutic hypnosis session, but it's a lot of the healing and a lot of the growth and development is what you practice at home, the homework you do. What is strongest within your mind, tip number one, is what you do over and over again. So you can have all the confidence, you can have all the joy, the happiness, the strength and power, whatever you want. But there's practice that comes with that. Just as a quick example, I'm sure you know the Dalai Lama, head of the Buddhist spiritual community. The man's 89 years old. The Dalai Lama still meditates every day. He practices loving kindness and compassion 3 to 4 hours every day because he knows that what is strongest within your mind is what you practice over and over again. And read his books. Read the books written by the Dalai Lama. He talks about the anger and the sorrow and the despair, about what's going on, not only in Tibet, but the world at large. The Chinese government is still bulldozing down his monastery, still arresting his monks, torturing his monks. So as a human being, of course, he's going to feel anger. He's going to feel despair, sorrow. He was exiled out of Tibet in like 1958, something like that, 1957. But he doesn't want that to be who he is. So every day he practices loving kindness and compassion meditation. And if anybody was to have it down by now, you think it'd be that guy. He's not married. He doesn't have any kids. He has a staff of people who meet his every need and want. And yet there he is every afternoon, 2, 3, 4 hours, practicing loving kindness and compassion at 89 years old after pretty much 80 years of training and practice. So what is strongest within your mind is what you do over and over again. So if you want joy in your life, if you want confidence, if you want happiness, you can have it, but it comes with some practice. Even if, since you talk about entrepreneurship and business and in some cases, self-improvement, a lot of your listeners will probably know Tony Robbins, the self-help and development guy. He's been doing the work for 40 years. And if you've seen that documentary about him that came out a few years ago called I'm Not Your Guru, it takes place over the course of a week at one of his week-long events in one of those big arenas when he's talking to 10,000 people. But it shows him at home before he goes to the event space each day. He's doing the meditation work. He's doing his physical stuff like cold plunge and jumping on those trampolines for adrenal glands. He's still doing the work 40 years later. Again, if anybody was probably have it down by now, you think it'd be Tony Robbins. Yet there he is every day practicing. So tip number one, what is strongest within your mind is what you do over and over again. So if you want more confidence and happiness, there's practice around that. Now, the second tip is it doesn't take months and years to change your mindset. So a lot of people may get a little apprehensive about the work that needs to be done, thinking, I've been anxious, I've been afraid, I've been angry for years, if not decades. It's going to take years and decades to change. It doesn't. You can literally start measuring change within the brain within a week. Start seeing
No.
well, in terms of how to change.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Here's a great way to change. Just pretend. The mind cannot tell the difference. So here's probably the biggest tip of all, which is number 5, but we'll do it now. You can change how your brain communicates with the brain cells and rewire the brain just by pretending. And there was a research study that was done back in the 1990s, and the researchers wanted to watch the brain as it learns something new. And so they picked piano. And so they brought a bunch of volunteers in to play piano, and they taught them simple little scales and exercises and little songs. And they had this first group just practice 2 hours a day. And they practiced piano 2 hours a day in the lab. And they did that for 7 days straight, 2 hours a day. They had a second group just come in and just dink around on the piano without any focus, without any structure. They just played notes, even though they didn't know how to play. They had a third group, which was the control group. They didn't do anything, because when you do this kind of research, you want to compare and contrast. Here's a group that is learning how to play piano. Here's a group that doesn't do anything. At the end of the week, what are the differences within the brain? They had a fourth group, and here's where it gets interesting. They had a fourth group only pretend to play piano. So like that first group, they showed them the scales, the exercises, the little songs, but instead of sitting at the piano, they went over to a couch or recliner, they closed their eyes, and they pretended to play piano just with their imaginations. And at the end of the week, they MRIs, SPEC scans, all that stuff, measured the brains, looked at the differences. The control group, of course, nothing changed. They didn't do anything new. They didn't learn anything. So nothing changed in the brain. The group that also just plucked around on the piano and didn't have any structure, didn't have any focus, also nothing changed in the brain because they weren't learning anything. Okay. Now, the first group that actually put their hands on the piano, worked the keys with their fingers, they were learning scales and songs and had structure and focus. They developed a new neural network in the part of the brain for music and learning. Brain cells connecting together in the part of the brain for music and learning. Of course, this makes sense. Not a big mystery, but they were learning something new, so they rewired their brain just in about a week's time. What's also extraordinary is the group who only pretended to play piano also developed the same neural network in the same part of the brain as those piano players who had focus and structure. They didn't touch the piano. They didn't hear any music. They didn't read any music with their eyes on sheet music. They only closed their eyes and pretended to be that person who was playing piano, and they literally rewired their brain. So you can have the confidence. You can have the happiness. You can have the joy. What if you just pretended? And you may be old enough, and some of your listeners may be old enough to remember the 1970s Olympics. And the Soviet Union gymnastic team was very domineering in the Olympics, in the World Championships. They won all the gold, the silver, and the bronze. They won all the World Championships, and nobody understood what they were doing to be so far ahead of everyone else in the world in the terms of gymnastics. And at the end of the 70s, early 70s, some of the athletes, some of the coaches from the gymnastic team started to defect. And what we found out, the world found out, and there's books written about this, is that the Soviet Union gymnastics team was spending at least 50% of their time in mental rehearsal. So they would sit, after practicing the parallel bars or the mat work or whatever they were doing, they would sit in a recliner, sit on a couch, close their eyes, and imagine the routine. And now we know why that works. 20 years later, they were doing the research. We know that was literally wiring that success into their brains. And that's why they're so far dominant. And I guarantee you that every single Olympic athlete, probably every single professional athlete, is now spending some time, whether it's half an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours, every day practicing within their own minds after spending time on the court or wherever.
Is this something you work with clients and you actually get them to do a mental reproduction or rehearsal or practice?
Mm-hmm. That's a big part of neurolinguistic programming is future thinking. See yourself in the future. Who do you want to be in 6 months from now? And if you see yourself and feel the joy, the happiness, the confidence of the success that you're achieving, just like those piano players, just like those Soviet Union gymnasts. You can wire that into your brain. The problem, as you can probably see, though, what if you're practicing fear? What if you're practicing anxiety? Are you not then wiring that into your brain, into your nervous system? Again, that's why tip number one, what is strongest within your mind is what you do over and over again. What you practice, you get better at. So if you're practicing gymnastics, you're practicing playing the piano, or you're practicing fear or anxiety or anger, you're going to get better at it. And so again, just like the Dalai Lama, there's not just, or going to the gym. You just don't get a gym membership, go do weights and the treadmill twice, and then you're all buffed out and looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger or whoever for the rest of your life. You also maybe, some of your listeners may be old enough to remember Jack LaLanne, the great fitness expert who was popular in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. He had his own, at least in America, had his own line of gyms, and had one of the first exercise guys to have his own TV show promoting fitness and health. He was working out the day before he died at the age of 96.
Wow.
Because it just didn't work out until the age of 40, and then he just looked like that. Arnold Schwarzenegger still works out. Sylvester Stallone still works out. If you want that health and the vitality, you have to work out. If you want that joy, that happiness, that confidence, you have to practice. If you're not, you're going to resolve back to default settings, which may be fear, anxiety, worry, and anger. And so again, tip number one, what is strongest in your mind is what you do over and over again. The second tip, it doesn't take long. Within a week, you could measure noticeable differences within your brain just by practicing. And I get it, maybe you don't have 2 hours every day. But what if you could just practice for 5 minutes, 10 minutes? Just feeling that joy, that happiness, seeing yourself 6 months from now with the health, with the vitality, with the ideal weight, with the success, with the promotion, with the business being successful. You are literally rewiring your brain. And as you do that, you start becoming aware of ways to achieve that success. And so, the third tip, just by spending maybe 5-10 minutes, if that's all you have, if you got a half an hour, do a half an hour. If you got an hour, do an hour. But just by sitting in a comfortable place, closing your eyes, pretending you're the person you want to become, you can literally rewire your brain, just like those Soviet Union athletes. Probably every Olympic athlete does to this very day.
Is there a better time to do this? Some people say exercise is better in the morning rather than the afternoon. It has a bigger impact on your body. Does it matter when you do this mental practice?
It doesn't necessarily matter when, but I think a big part of why, another big part of the reason why exercising in the morning works is because you'll do it. I've noticed myself, okay, this morning I'm really, really busy. I'll do my exercise in the afternoon. What are the chances that's going to happen? Probably next to none. And because I get busy, I just keep putting it off. And it's like, well, now I'm hungry. I better eat dinner. Well, I don't want to exercise, right after dinner, and all of a sudden it's 9:00. I'm not going to exercise. And so instead of doing it right first thing in the morning, I put it off. And so one aspect of doing this work, where it's the meditation work or the physical exercise or whatever you're doing, is doing it in the morning. But what is interesting about this, by doing it in the morning, and let's say you're practicing like the Dalai Lama, you're practicing loving kindness and compassion, you're practicing joy, you're practicing happiness, you're practicing confidence. What this does is it refocuses a part of your brain called the reticular activating system. And it's a part of your brain that first and foremost is always looking or sensing danger. This is why in the middle of the night, even though your eyes are closed, you may hear the baby crying in the other room. So you wake up. You smell smoke. You wake up. You're too hot. You're too cold. You hear the door creak open at 2:00 in the morning. You wake up. You have to go to the bathroom. You wake up. There's your reticular activating system, that part of the brain when you're driving your car and heading towards a green light, and out of your peripheral vision, the corner of your eye, you see a car going way too fast towards the red. There's lots of information The air conditioner's on, the radio's on, there's lights, there's signs, there's people, there's bike rides. Yet one thing stood out in your peripheral vision, a car going way too fast, so you slam on the brakes. That's your reticular activating system. The secondary task of the reticular activating system is to solve problems, find solutions, and create answers. And it's that part of your brain when you're thinking about buying a new car and you're thinking about buying, I don't know, a Jeep, I guess, or a pickup truck. And now all of a sudden you see Jeeps or pickup trucks everywhere.
Every corner.
Every parking lot. Your neighbor has one. You never noticed that before. That's because in trying to solve the problem of the new car, you're thinking about a Jeep or you're thinking about a pickup truck or something. You're thinking about a Prius or something. You now focused on the solution. According to neuroscience, we're being inundated with 11 million bits of information per second through our five senses. So the temperature of the room, the lights in the room, sounds, things you may not notice because unless it's too hot or too cold, unless it's too bright or too dark, unless it's too loud or, a big helicopter going overhead, you don't notice these things unless it comes right into your attention. So it filters out because we're only cognizant of 50 bits of that 11 million. So we filter out a lot of stuff. So this is a long answer to a short question. When's the best time to do it? I would say a lot of this, the best time to do this is in the morning, because that will do is, as you're maybe doing a practice of loving kindness and compassion or thinking of success or confidence or joy, that's going to start flooding your brain with maybe serotonin and dopamine and oxytocin. That's now flooded your brain. It's now going to refocus your reticular activating system to find yourself more things to be happy about, joyful about, confident about. And so now you're setting yourself up for your day to, instead of looking for a Jeep, you're looking for a pickup truck, right? You're focusing that 50 bits of cognizant awareness on confidence and joy, happiness, success, instead of that to-do list and, oh my God, I have that meeting and I got to talk to that idiot and I got to deal with that moron. And all of a sudden, by the end of the day, you're having a bad day. Your day goes from bad to worse. Why? Because you focused on nothing but problems. You set your reticular activating system to find nothing but problems, therefore filtering out all the good stuff. So a great time to do this, to finally, I guess, maybe answer your question, do this in the morning. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour if you can. But if you just do 5 minutes, set yourself up for success for the day. Do it 5 minutes at lunchtime. And another big tip is, as you're going to bed, as you may start ruminating about the day.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a protection protocol your mind sets up. It's trying to protect you from that situation by running different scenarios, whether it's something that happened in the past that has caused hurt or pain or anger or fear or anxiety, something that happened yesterday, last week, or 30 years ago, or somebody's fearing something in the future, like giving that presentation at the big conference 3 months from now. You're comfortable and cozy, safe in bed, and yet your mind's thinking about that thing that happened yesterday, last week, 30 years ago, or that thing in the future. And so you start creating that that adrenaline, that cortisol, that stress response, even though you're safe in bed. And the reason to do this is trying to protect you by running scenarios, finding ways, well, what if this happens? What if this happens again? How do we protect you? Sort of like a flight simulator. If a pilot needs to fly to London next week, they've never been to Heathrow Airport. They're going to get on a flight simulator and practice. What if there's turbulence over the Atlantic? What if there's, they switch runways on me at the last minute? What if it's at nighttime in the dark? What if it's raining? They're going to practice every scenario. So when they actually fly in real life, they're comfortable. They know how to do it. That's what your mind's doing. It's running scenarios. What happens if they start rolling their eyes and chuckling and laughing at me at my speech in a couple of months? What if they start throwing tomatoes at me? What if they chase me off the stage with pitchforks and fire? It's running these really ridiculous scenarios to do a flight simulator, to practice, or that what if that thing happened 30 years ago happens again?
What's the next tip? Where do we go from here?
Well, the big thing is, the biggest tip of all probably is just practice, 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 whether it's in the morning, whether it's as you're going to sleep at night. And that's a big tip there. If you find yourself ruminating about something that happened in the past or fearing something in the future, you have to break that trance state. And there's, certainly various exercises, even just by taking a couple of deep breaths, giving yourself a hug. And I know we're not on video, but if you were to hug yourself, just grab your shoulders and making that cross in front of you and start thinking of somebody you want to give a hug to, whether it's somebody in your life today, a good friend, a dog, a cat, a pet. Maybe you saw a nature documentary about elephants and you fell in love with a baby elephant. Maybe there's somebody who's no longer with us, your grandfather, your grandmother, maybe somebody you've never met before, Mother Teresa or somebody like that. Visualize something or somebody while you're giving yourself a hug and literally change the chemistry within your brain. You'll start creating GABA in your brain, which will eliminate the adrenaline and the cortisol. So you can start producing oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, and now you're going to sleep, flooding your brain with this good feeling state within your body. And as you're focusing, it's hard for your mind to focus on two things at once. So instead of focusing on that hurt or that pain that happened yesterday, last week, 30 years ago, or that thing you're fearing in the future, you're focusing on that person you care for, that pet, that animal that you care for, while giving yourself that hug. And between the physiology of that hug and the neurology of visualizing that person, you'll reset your nervous system and go to bed flooding your bloodstream with the hormones of oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine. So that's the biggest tip of all. Tip number 5. If you could go to sleep just doing a simple little exercise like that, and I know it may seem a little silly, but you are literally taking back control of your physiology and your neurology just by giving yourself a hug and thinking of a person that you care for. And that will turn off the stress response. And imagine then doing it again in the morning or spending 5 minutes visualizing your future success.
Really, what we're talking about here is actually, you said it, taking back control. So it's really taking control, I guess, of our emotion, our thinking, our and the physical responses that our thinking has created.
Yeah, and you can do it. It's just nobody ever told you that you can, or usually you don't get that message that you can take back control. And you can do it actually very simply. Maybe that's tip number 6. You can do it very, very simply and easily through little exercises like giving yourself a hug and thinking, and then lighting up the visual part of the brain by thinking of somebody, visualizing somebody, experiencing another person who you would like to give a hug to, or again, that dog, that cat, that pet. Because, and I forget which number it was, maybe tip number 4, the mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined.
Yeah.
And it'll change your vision. And that's, again, back to that nightmare example that I mentioned some minutes ago. Even if it's ridiculous, like the Wizard of Oz trees throwing apples at you, chasing you down the street, or something super realistic, like a war veteran having a nightmare about being on the front lines. You're safe and comfortable in bed, but your mind thinks you're back in war. Your mind thinks you're being chased by trees. It's not happening, but you'll change your physiology. You can do that on purpose and do it for joy, happiness, love, kindness, compassion, success, confidence, whatever it is you want. You can pretend that you're doing it, and it'll literally rewire your brain, just like those piano players, just like those Soviet Union gymnasts. You can rewire your brain, and it doesn't take, years or months even. It takes weeks. And there was really quickly, we'll end because I know we're running up to time, if not overtime. There was a research study done by the University College of London some years ago, and they found that it takes 66 days to create a habit.
Okay.
And so within a week, you can be rewiring your brain. Within about 8-10 weeks, you can have a new habit of joy, new habit of happiness, a new habit of success, a new habit of confidence. And so, to wrap this up, you can do the work and change how you feel about yourself, but literally rewire your brain or rewire your nervous system, rewire your neurology, rewire your physiology. And it can be as simple as pretending you are the person you want to be. Just like the gymnast who's pretending, imagining that they are successfully, completing the dismount off the parallel bars or the entire routine on the mat. By pretending and seeing yourself successfully completing the task or whatever it is you're doing, you can literally wire that success into your brain. And we're talking weeks, not years. And you can take back control. I know sometimes there are issues around, trauma and hurt and pain that I've experienced in the past. And that's what's great about doing a therapy like therapeutic hypnosis. You find somebody in your area, or so many of us now are doing Zoom sessions, and it works very well over Zoom because people feel relaxed and comfortable in their homes. They feel safe in their homes. And so it works really well over Zoom. So by doing this even deeper work of therapeutic hypnosis, not talk therapy, which can be very helpful and healing, but this is a different thing. We're not talking about this issue for months and years. We're going to, go through it over maybe 2 or 3 sessions. And if you've had a traumatic incident or you feel like you're being blocked and stuck, and maybe you don't even know why, you can heal it. Maybe that's tip number 7. I don't know. We keep going on and on with all these tips. We're
going to have to wrap it up there. One of my jobs on this podcast is to keep us to time, and we are pretty much out of time. Really interesting topic with so much to discuss. If our listeners want to get in touch with you and talk about maybe how they might overcome fear or anxiety, and what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Best way to get in touch with me is probably through my website, aceanytest.com. You can find me there, find more information about me, find my email address, craig@aceanytest.com. I'm on Facebook, aceanytest on Facebook and Instagram, but the best way to get right in touch with me is aceanytest.com.
Great. We'll put that in the show notes. Craig, thanks so much for your time today. It's been
Lindsay, you're welcome. Rail is really, I really appreciate the invitation and giving the opportunity. I know this is a long conversation, and I appreciate you giving the time and being able to give these tips.
So, and with that, I'm going to wrap it up. This is Lindsay Adams signing off on behalf of my buddy Rail Bricker from Perth, Australia, and myself in Brisbane, Australia. We look forward to you joining us on another podcast sometime soon.